years 70,000 million euros on increasing their defense capacities. 70,000 million euros in the next 3 years in order to boost their defense capacity. It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. And, you know, I was not a fan of President Trump, but I think he was right in one thing. The Europeans doesn't share their part of the burden. We don't share our part of the burden. And certainly everybody prefers butter to canyons. Me too. Everybody. But sometimes if you don't have canyons, you don't have butter.
This is my video update from Ayia Napa on this Friday, midday on May the 12th. Let's talk about some news. And so yesterday there was a lot of talk about the counteroffensive starting up, and there was a lot of posts on Telegram and Twitter. Even RT ran a report saying the counteroffensive had begun. This was yesterday evening, local time, Cyprus time, and according to the reports, the counteroffensive began in Bakhmut, and there was activity in Kharkov and Kherson and Zaporozhye, and this was the big spring, fall, winter, summer, spring, fall, winter, summer, fall, spring counteroffensive. It was underway yesterday evening, and then after about an hour, it was refuted. It became apparent that there was no big spring, fall, winter, summer, spring, winter, fall, summer offensive, counteroffensive, offensive, counter to the counter offensive of the offensive to the counteroffensive. Anyway, nothing started up. Basically, there was just a lot of concern over back and forth fighting that is taking place in Bakhmut, and allegedly there were Ukraine tanks that were brought into Bakhmut to advance the Ukraine military position towards I believe the southern flank. But then Prigozhin, of all people, he came out with a statement, and he said that Wagner had advanced another, I don't even know, 100 meters, 220 meters, and all that was left was like another 300 meters before all of Bakhmut was taken. Long story short, this was just the back and forth fighting that takes place in Bakhmut, and the Ukraine military seemed to have advanced in the southern flank, from what I understand, but the Russian military advanced towards the middle, towards the center of Bakhmut, and that was pretty much it. So that was the big drama that was happening yesterday evening. Bottom line is no big offensive to the counteroffensive of the spring offensive to the counteroffensive of the offensive took place yesterday. Elenksy gave an interview to the BBC, and he said that Ukraine needs more time for the big one, the big offensive. He said Ukraine needs more time, and that was the interview he gave to the BBC. And in this interview, Elenksy uses the argument that it would be irresponsible for him to send the Ukraine military into this offensive without having the proper equipment and training. He said, with what we have, we can go forward and succeed, but we would lose a lot of people. I think that's unacceptable. We still need a little more time. Elenksy is very concerned about the well-being of Ukrainian troops. And to me, this is just all about the Elenksy regime basically saying that they don't want to go through with this offensive because they understand that this offensive, as it is right now, is not going to succeed. And they know that if this offensive does not succeed, then it means that their weapons, and more importantly, their money flow, risks drying up. That's what really concerns the Elenksy regime. That is why you have guys like Siski, the commander of Bakhmut. He doesn't want to take part in the offensive. He doesn't want to move towards Kherson and Zaporozhye and command troops there, because he understands that he would be commanding a losing initiative. And so he's saying, you know what, I'm busy in Bakhmut, so don't bother me. Don't send me to Zaporozhye or Kherson. I'm too busy over here. And Zaluzhny's just calling in sick. He's just saying, I'm not feeling well, everybody, and I can't attend NATO meetings, and I can't have anything to do with this offensive, and I just don't feel well. That's pretty much what Zaluzhny's saying. There are rumors that Zaluzhny, I talked about this yesterday in my video, there are rumors that Zaluzhny was liquidated in an airstrike the other day by the Russian military, but I'm hearing that Zaluzhny he just doesn't want to take part in this offensive because he doesn't want the L. He doesn't want to take the loss. And so that's why he's avoiding all contact with NATO and with the Elenksy regime. He's calling in sick. Bloomberg is basically telling the Elenksy regime, just go through with this thing. We don't care. That's what Bloomberg is saying, citing their sources. You've been given enough weapons. You've been given enough money. Now get on with this. Bloomberg writes that Ukraine has received 200 tanks and 300 infantry fighting vehicles since December, with a total military aid estimated at $30 billion. While Ukraine says Ukraine says the aid is not enough, Western military analysts say no army thinks it's well equipped enough to do what it's supposed to do. That is a quote from a military analyst. That's the nature of the armed forces. Mark Ketchen, a consultant with the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, told Bloomberg. Mark Ketchian. According to the military analysts, further developments for Ukraine will depend on factors that go far beyond equipment. The outcome of the southern offensive will be affected by training, intelligence, and the ability to continue to block Russia's superior air force, writes Bloomberg. How exactly are they going to block Russia's superior air force without the S-300 air defense systems? I don't know, but basically it's Bloomberg signaling to the Elenksy regime that they have to go through with this offensive. They have to do this thing. And the Elenksy regime and the Elenksy commanders are saying, we don't want to go through with this thing. That's how I'm seeing it. But of course, I could be wrong, and this offensive may be launched as I'm making this video. It may be launched tomorrow. It may be launched the next day. Who knows? I'm just giving you my take on things. I'm seeing the Elenksy regime and the commanders trying to avoid this offensive as best they can, and Elenksy even going to the BBC to explain why he doesn't want to go through with this offensive, and he uses the excuse of the troops not being well trained. Even the New York Times picked up on the BBC interview, and they ran an article with the title "Elenksy, citing equipment gaps, says it's too soon for the counteroffensive." President Elenksy said on Thursday that Ukraine needed more time to begin a counteroffensive against Russia because it does not yet have enough military equipment from its Western backers. Though Ukrainian officials had repeatedly described the assault as imminent, in terms of personnel and motivation, Ukraine's forces are ready for the operation, Elenksy said in an interview broadcast by the BBC on Thursday, but they are still waiting for some promised hardware from the West, specifically armored vehicles. Quote, "We can go forward and I think be successful," he said, "but we'd lose a lot of people. I think that's unacceptable, so we need to wait. We still need a bit more time." Borrell, he said the other day at some event that he was speaking at, that the EU, they've prepared, and the key word is prepared, they've prepared 1,155 millimeter shells and over 1,000 rockets for Kiev. And the key word there is prepared. What does that mean, prepared? they're about to produce it. They're looking for someone to produce it. They've already got it ready, which I doubt. But what does the word prepared mean? Borrell, he's got a taste for conflict. He's really got a taste for this conflict. Borrell, Jungle Joseph, the head of EU diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, also said that the EU has trained 17,000 Ukrainian fighters and will train 30,000 AFU soldiers by the end of the year. Borrell is loving the war. He is loving the war. I'm telling you, that guy he wants to ramp things up to the max. The key word is prepared. I'm thinking that when Borrell says prepared, he means that they're looking for industry to produce this stuff, but it hasn't been produced. It's being prepared. That's what Borrell means. So as all of this back and forth with the offensive is taking place, Elenksy did come out and he did say that this conflict, while it is undergoing a delay in ramping up, this offensive is undergoing a delay. Elenksy said that he believes Ukraine will win this conflict by around the time of the U.S. presidential elections. Elenksy said, "Who knows where we will be? I believe we will win by then," saying that Ukraine will win by the 2024 elections. So September, October of 2024, is that what Elenksy means, or does he mean inauguration of the new president on January 2025? He didn't really put an exact date, but he's saying that sometime around the election period, Ukraine will have wrapped this thing up. Now, the UK, they announced the other day that they have indeed delivered Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Ukraine ahead of the big offensive, the counteroffensive to the offensive of the offensive of the counteroffensive. The UK, they have provided Storm Shadow long-range missiles. Now, from what I understand, these Storm Shadow missiles are not going to be a game changer, though they are going to cause some trouble for the Russian military. It's not going to be something that the Russian military and Russian air defense will not be able to handle or to adjust to, in much the same way that they adjusted to the previous wonder weapon, which was the HIMAR missiles. So these long-range missiles will be problematic, but they're not the wonder weapon that everyone is touting them to be. And the Russian military, they're going to find a way to deal with these long-range missiles. They have a range of around, I believe, 300 kilometers, and they have to be launched via air, via fighter plane, via fighter jet. And this is not what Ukraine wanted. They wanted the ATACMS, which were launched from the ground. But this is what they got, and this is what the U.S. told the UK to deliver to Ukraine. And I really believe that the US did indeed tell the UK that they're not going to deliver ATACMS, but the UK should move forward and deliver these Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. These missiles are also, these are not hypersonic or supersonic. These are, from what I gather, these are subsonic. So that's also important to note. And the U.S. has come out and pretty much said that they're relieved that they're going to have the pressure of delivering ATACMS lifted from them. They're not going to have to deal with all the pressure of delivering ATACMS to Ukraine because they got the UK to deliver these long-range missiles. And Blinken even gave an interview to PBS, and he talked about this weapons delivery and whether the U.S. will deliver these ATACMS, or why the U.S. has not delivered ATACMS. And Blinken said different countries will do different things depending on their own capacities. This is what he told PBS NewsHour, adding that the U.S. had provided some things uniquely to Ukraine through this process. He suggested, however, that Washington needs to be sure that Ukrainians are well trained and qualified to handle more sophisticated weapon systems. If they don't know how to use it, it's not going to do much good, Blinken argued. If they don't know how to maintain it, you give it to them, it falls apart in 7 days. Blinken also said that Washington will help Kiev replenish any of the weapons or weapon systems that they lose in the big offensive. So that was what Blinken said with regards to the Storm Shadow cruise missiles being delivered to Ukraine via the UK, and his excuse, his rationale for the US not delivering ATACMS was that the Ukraine military is not trained to use ATACMS and they don't have what they need to maintain the ATACMS systems. So why send these systems to Ukraine? Just get the UKs to send the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. And I'm just wondering what is the platform that's going to launch these Storm Shadow cruise missiles? What is the fighter jet that Ukraine is going to use to launch these missiles? I don't know. I have no idea. Let me know in the comments down below if you know. But my thinking with the Storm Shadows, to wrap up this segment, is that I don't feel like the purpose of these missiles is for the offensive. I don't think that's their purpose. I think the purpose of the Storm Shadow missiles are to hit Crimea. I don't know how many of these missiles the UK has delivered either, but I imagine their purpose is to hit Crimea, to target the Kerch Bridge or something like that, or Sevastopol, and just basically to terrorize the Russian public and the Russian people living in Crimea. That's what I believe the purpose of these missiles are. I don't think they're intended for the offensive or to change the military outcome in Ukraine. I believe their purpose is to hit certain areas in Crimea and therefore create problems for the people of Crimea and problems for the Putin government. That's what I think these missiles are intended for. So we will see how the Russians deal with this escalation from the UK. The UK, Poland, the Baltics, these countries are tripping over themselves to escalate with Russia. Who can escalate more with Russia? Is it Poland? Is it going to be the UK? Is it Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania? Who can show the neocons that they're willing to escalate more with Russia? That's basically what we have going on here. The UK, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. They're all fighting for the approval of the neocons. And with that approval comes weapons, comes money, comes all of these things. That's why all of the political elite in these countries, they're pushing for more escalation because they believe that they will get rewarded by the neocons. The more they escalate, the more they will get rewarded. And there are articles actually talking about how Poland is being prepared by the United States to be the new big military power in Europe. And I think that the Polish political class, the Polish elite, they definitely believe that Germany is on the decline, and if they can continue to show to their masters in DC that they're willing to do anything to support the conflict in Russia, well, then I believe that the political class in Poland, they see themselves as being crowned the next big power in the EU, taking over the top spot from Germany. I think that that's what they believe their reward is going to be. So If you want escalation with Russia, look to the UK, Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. Those are the countries that will do the Biden White House neocon escalation bidding. And the White House, they are hunting down Russians. This is an article from CNN. The Biden White House, as they prepare some sort of prisoner swap, or at least they're putting out feelers for a prisoner swap with Russia. For Wieland and I believe the Wall Street Journal reporter, that's who I believe the U.S. wants back. They're starting to explore some sort of prisoner swap, and the Biden White House, they've come to the conclusion that they don't have the Russian spies to get a prisoner swap deal done, and so they're now going around Europe and actually going around the world and talking to allies to see if they have any spies and any high-profile Russian spies that they would be willing to hand over to Washington so that they can put a prisoner swap together. Pretty incredible stuff when you think about it. The title for the CNN article is Biden administration hunts, that's the word they use, hunts for high-value Russians for potential prisoner swap. The Biden White House is hunting for high-profile Russians that they can then use in a prisoner swap. Pretty incredible stuff, man. I am telling you, the Biden White House is really losing their mind over Russia. They're putting pressure on South Africa. This is another story that ran the other day. The U.S. ambassador says that South Africa gave weapons and ammunition to Russia for the Ukraine war. The United States accuses South Africa of supplying ammunition to Russia on a Russian ship that docked at the Simonstown Naval Base in Cape Town last December. The U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brigidi, said the U.S. is confident that South Africa has done it. Among what we noted was the parking of a cargo ship at the Simonstown Naval Base from December 6 to 8, 2022, on which we are sure weapons and ammunition were loaded for shipment to Russia, the ambassador said. According to him, the U.S. government took this issue seriously. We would like South Africa to start practicing its policy of non-alignment, he said. Asked how accurate the U.S. intelligence data is on the supply of ammunition from South Africa to Russia, Brigidi said he was ready to put my life on it. Wow, that is quite a statement from the ambassador. He's ready to put his life on it. Okay. The U.S. is also putting pressure on Georgia. Now, this was going to be my clown world from yesterday, but it's moved past the clown world, and now this has become a real serious issue because yesterday, actually a couple of days ago, the Russian government, they lifted the visa restrictions on Georgians traveling to Russia. So they don't need a visa to go to Russia. And I believe now they can travel to Russia visa-free for up to 3 months. 3 months every 6 months. So every 180 days, they can travel to Russia and stay in Russia for up to 90 days visa-free. Now, the reason the Russian government did this, because they had a visa in place from 2019. So this predates the special military operation. But the reason the Russian government lifted this visa for Georgians is because Russia has, I believe, millions of Georgians who actually reside in Russia, and for humanitarian reasons, they made it easier for the Georgians in Russia to travel to Georgia and for Georgians to travel to Russia and see family, friends, relatives, and stuff like that. And the Russian government, the Russian Foreign Ministry, they said this visa lift was done for humanitarian reasons, and this means that Russian flights, from what I understand, Russian flights are going to resume to Georgia. And this really, really upset the United States and the European Union. This even upset the Georgian president. Now, Georgia is The real power in the Georgian government comes from the prime minister. But the president of Georgia, Salome Zurabichvili, she said, another Russian provocation, resuming direct flights and lifting visa ban with Georgia is unacceptable as long as Russia continues its aggression on Ukraine and occupies our territory. So she is upset that people will be able to travel visa-free to Russia, and that there will be flights, allegedly there will be flights resuming, or more available flights from Georgia to Russia and from Russia to Georgia. So she's against the free movement and the free travel of people. That's what she's upset about. She wants travel to be canceled. An interesting statement from the Georgian president. The Georgian prime minister and the Georgian government, the foreign ministry, they were happy with this. They said this is rational and it makes sense. And it's important for Georgians to be able to travel to Russia and to see their family and their friends. The country's foreign minister, Ilya Darchevskyy, welcomed Russia's announcement, arguing it will make life easier for many Georgians. He noted that over 1 million Georgian citizens reside in Russia while maintaining close ties with relatives in their homeland. From a humanitarian point of view, this decision would be welcomed by any responsible government, the foreign minister said. So what did the United States and the EU, what did they do when they heard about this visa restriction lift from the Russian government and the resumption of more flights between Russia and Georgia? Well, the United States, they just outright threatened Georgia. They threatened Georgia. The U.S. has cautioned Georgia that its companies could become the target of sanctions if direct Russia-Georgia flights are allowed to resume, urging the South Caucasus nation to refrain from increasing engagement with Moscow. In an official statement given by several media outlets, including the Georgian Accent on Thursday, a State Department representative noted that many Western countries, including the United States, prohibit Russian aircraft from entering their airspace. The United States prohibit Russian aircraft from entering Georgian airspace. The United States prohibits Russian aircraft from entering Georgian airspace. Man, oh man. If flights between Russia and Georgia resume, given that companies at Georgian airports may be targeted for sanctions, we would be concerned if they serve aircraft subject to additional import and export controls, the spokesperson said, adding that now is not the time to increase engagement with Russia. What did the EU say? Well, the EU, they said that they want Georgia to turn away Russian planes. Tbilisi has been advised to support Western aviation sanctions against Moscow, a senior official said. The EU is urging Georgia not to allow Russian planes to enter its territory. Peter Stanow, the bloc's lead spokesperson for foreign affairs, said on Thursday his comments came a day after Russian President Putin lifted the flight ban and visa regime with the Caucasus country. Speaking during a press briefing, Stanow explained that the EU had taken note of the decision by the Russian authorities to lift the air travel ban on Georgia. He pointed out, however, that Russia's illegal aggression against Ukraine has resulted in numerous Western countries slapping sanctions on the country's aviation sector. We don't allow flights to Russia from Russia over Russia, the spokesman reminded everybody. Against the backdrop, he continued, the EU encourages Georgia, which is aspiring to become an EU candidate country, to align with the existing EU sanctions against Russia in the area of aviation, as well as to remain vigilant when it comes to possible attempts to circumvent those restrictions. He also warned Georgia about what he described as unsafe Russian planes, claiming Western sanctions were hindering their maintenance. That sounds like a threat. That sounds like a threat from the EU. He also warned Georgia about what he described as unsafe Russian planes. I think the EU is issuing a threat to Georgia. I do not like that. I don't like that at all. But those are them EU values right there, huh? How about those EU values? We are prohibiting Russian planes from flying to Georgia. We prohibit it. We urge Georgia to turn Russian planes back, to turn them away from traveling to Georgia. The EU elite, they can get on their private planes and travel anywhere they want, anywhere they want. But us regular people, no traveling for you. No traveling for you. That's what this is all about. You know, when they first cooked up the flight bans, when Ursula von der Crazy cooked up the flight bans, she thought that Russians would pour onto the streets and they would overthrow the Putin government, and that didn't happen. But they kept the flight bans in place, even though this is hurting European aviation companies, it's hurting European travelers, all of these things. It served no good. This flight ban served no good. It didn't work. And all it does is it keeps people divided. But they've kept them in place. And I believe they've kept them in place even though they didn't work. They didn't serve their purpose of overthrowing the Putin government. I believe that the EU, they keep them in place because it serves the purpose of keeping people divided. Think of it as like balloon testing. All of the climate, social credit, CBDC, 15-minute city travel restrictions that you know they want to place on everybody. Think of this Russian travel ban as a type of balloon testing. Because you know that if they're doing it now with Russia, and if they think it's working out, you know that they're going to implement it in the future in different ways. So that's why they keep this travel ban in place. That's how I see it. They love to keep people divided, and they want people to be restricted in where they travel. While they can get on the private planes and travel anywhere. That's the future that they see. That's the future that they want. For the elites, the world's going to be completely open to them. They're going to be able to go wherever they want. For everybody else, well, you're going to have certain routes that you're going to have open to you, and there'll be certain criteria as to where you can travel, and maybe certain purchases that you've made are going to restrict you from traveling certain distances and all of these things. And so, I really see this travel ban as some sort of prelude to what they want to introduce to us in the next 5 or 10 years, or maybe even sooner. Of course, all of this is going to be rolled out with the central bank digital currencies. But, Georgia, resist. The US and the EU, they have no right whatsoever to tell you what planes can fly in and out of your country. That is the truth. If you're a sovereign nation, that's fact. If you're not a sovereign nation, like the countries of the EU, well then you have to go along with these absolutely brain dead dumb ideas of Van der Crazy. But then again, you're not a sovereign nation if you're part of the European Union. That's for sure. So since we're talking about Europe, let's do a clown world and talk about Eurovision, everyone's favorite song contest. And this year, let's walk up here. And this year, Eurovision, which is taking place, I believe, in Liverpool, because it was supposed to take place in Mariupol, according to Elenksy, but that didn't happen. And so this year it's taking place in Liverpool, and Elenksy, he wanted to speak at the Eurovision. He wanted to give a speech at the Eurovision Song Contest and beg for stuff, right? He wanted to beg for money and weapons and stuff like that. And you know that Elenksy, he loves to do these like celebrity events. I mean, he absolutely loves it. That's why when he was negged at the Oscars, when the Oscars said you can't speak, that probably was like the biggest gut punch to Elenksy that he could ever have received. Right? I bet you the guy was depressed for a couple of weeks after getting the no from the Oscars. Well, he got another no from Eurovision, and the Eurovision committee, the song contest committee, they have barred Elenksy from addressing Eurovision, the Eurovision Song Contest, according to the EBU spokesperson, the European Broadcasting spokesperson. The Eurovision Song Contest is an international entertainment show and governed by strict rules and principles which have been established since its creation. As part of these, one of the cornerstones of the contest is the non-political nature of the event. This principle prohibits the possibility of making political or similar statements as part of the contest. The request by Mr. Elenksy to address the audience at the Eurovision Song Contest, whilst made with laudable intentions, regrettably cannot be granted as it would be against the rules of the event. Yeah, what a bunch of bollocks. That statement is a bunch of bollocks. I'm talking big bollocks. Yeah, like Eurovision doesn't engage in any politics whatsoever. They don't do any of that, do they? They don't do any politics. That's just not the Eurovision style. Oh man, these guys. The reason they don't want Elenksy to speak at Eurovision is because no one likes Elenksy. He's had his 15 minutes and then some of fame, but all of these entertainment organizations, they're starting to realize that people just don't like Elenksy anymore. They're sick of him. Period. It's that simple. They don't want to hear him speaking on video and begging for stuff. It's as simple as that. But they're making the excuse that, we're not a political organization. Eurovision is more political than the European Union. That's how political Eurovision is. I mean, the only reason that Ukraine won last year was because it was politics. Because, to be quite honest, the song from Ukraine last year was completely forgettable. I mean, completely forgettable. But they had to give it to Ukraine because of politics. But this year, they're saying Ukraine was last year's news. Now they have to figure out what the new talking point is, what the new political subject is for the Eurovision Song Contest. It's just not Ukraine anymore. So that is the Eurovision Song Contest. Elenksy snubbed there, and he is going to be very, very upset about getting snubbed at Eurovision. Very, very upset. Oh boy. All right. I will leave the video there, everybody. Some people were over here and they wanted to walk across because they thought I was filming this way when I'm filming that way. So they're waiting over there. I'm like, you can pass because I'm filming this way. Anyway, the Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rockfin, and Telegram, and go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Today I'm wearing my Greek t-shirt. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care.